Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Prophet Podcast. I am here today with my co-host JT Runke. We're going to be doing a mock draft live, and then we're also getting into some of this training camp news. Is this fact or cap? That is what the segment is called. Do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so obviously since we have last talked, first of all, thank you all for the great support on this new journey that we're taking. I'm super excited. But man, have there been some storylines this past weekend that we'll get into. And some of them are for real, and for some of them, they're just not to be. It's that training camp fodder, right? It's the training camp darlings that we fall in love with a little bit too early. So we're gonna tell you what we think, and then you'll be better informed for your fantasy football drafts later this month.
It's always important to remember not to go all in on the hype trains during training camp, but
Yes.
that this is important because this is the first time we're actually seeing players. So it's kind of sorting out the garbage from the
Mm-hmm.
gems. And
Yep.
even since I sent you the list of stories that I just thought of, there've been even today so many more storylines coming out about different players are, him, as they say. So the first one I want to ask you about, I don't know what to make about this. I'm sure pretty much everyone listening is confused about this situation at this point. Dalvin Cook visits the Jets yesterday. He watched the whole practice, said, I think the odds are high that I sign. And then he left, and nothing has happened. Nothing. Is
Yeah,
this a
I
leverage
mean,
situation? What do you think?
I think it's maybe a little bit of Dalvin just kind of understanding the situation right now and where he is at. I think I saw a report that the Jets are kind of really his only offer right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've seen all offseason with kind of like Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette, Zeke Elliott. Like they're not there's not a lot out there for them. I know Zeke just met with the Patriots, left there without a deal as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's just kind of how these things go. I think you kind of reassess what's happening, and then you make you make your decision from there. But really, all signs do point to that Dalvin Cook will be a New York Jet within maybe the next 2 weeks or so. I mean, from Aaron Rodgers kind of taking the pay cut that he did
Yeah.
to Dalvin Cook, and his agent saying, "You'll see," as in terms of is Dalvin signing with the Jets. I think it's pointing towards Dalvin Cook joining them.
Does it remind you a little bit about Hopkins came here, he, wine and dined, and then left without anything happening? People go, oh, I guess that didn't work out. And then what, like 3 weeks later, was it? Comes out
Yeah,
that he is
yeah.
signing.
And it's you kind of you never know with these things, as we've seen, especially today with kind of the whole situation in Denver with Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler, both seeming or Tim Patrick not being here for the season, or KJ
Yeah.
Hamler maybe not being on that team. Things can change in an instant, and if you have another situation like a certain running back in the Midwest here that we'll talk about in a little bit, like things can change on a dime. And I think until it's certain that Dalvin Cook doesn't have any other offers, I think he probably kind of breaks a little bit and
Yeah.
pauses the kind of talks right now. But yeah, I think one way or another he'll end up in New York Jet.
Now, personally, I have Brees Hall in several keeper leagues. So this is kind of worst case scenario
It
for me
really
because
is like,
you've
yeah,
got Brees Hall and you're like, okay, maybe this season it starts off slow because you come off the ACL, but you know that the job is his and his alone. So then to have Dalvin Cook potentially coming in here, even just the fact that they're pursuing Dalvin Cook makes me question how confident are they in Brees Hall. I mean, all offseason they're saying, oh, he's ahead of progress, and then they seem to be pursuing Dalvin Cook. It makes me wonder if Brees Hall is someone who needs to be faded in fantasy football because his ADP is very high right now. It's let me see if I have it pulled up. He is currently going as about the RB 15, um, going 25th, 25-9 is the spot. So late second, third round, pretty much. That's early for a guy coming off a torn ACL.
I mean, just look at
And
the difference between him and Javonte. Like Javante's
yeah,
ADP is around
yeah.
round 7, and they're kind of coming off the same injury, kind of in the same like realm of the injury type and kind of how their progression. It's almost very. I think Javante's happened even before Brees Hall's, and he's still getting discounted like that. And when you compact on top a Dalvin Cook coming into the mix, yeah, I think you almost start to have to fade him.
People seem to be almost more scared of J.K. Dobbins' ACL tear from now 2 years ago than they are scared about Brees Hall's.
And that just kind of blows my mind because no doubt Brees Hall is like the better runner of the two.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like
It's torn
you know what happens
Yeah.
exactly. You know what happens. They always start slow, and if anything, I think you can maybe buy low on Brees Hall. I think that's kind of a way you
Mm-hmm.
could go without drafting him. Maybe kind of once he gets to week 5 or 6, kind of
The
see how this
disappointment
is
settles in.
exactly. I'm sure you could probably flip him and get him right before that trade deadline. But for right now, I don't want anything to do with him.
All right. I'm starting to get on that side of things. I had been higher on him than I probably should have been given the ACL, but now with the pursuit of Dalvin Cook, I can't touch it in the third round.
No,
The
me neither.
next topic, Seahawks running backs. They are injured again. Which Seahawks? All of them. Just it seems like a yearly thing now. Kenneth Walker, he was gone last training camp preseason with the was it the hernia? So he's I start to get a little worried about his injury history, actually. I know he's still young, but Zach Charbonnet, it gets even worse from at least a fantasy football perspective. Because if one of them goes down, the other kind of it looks like a really good pick. It's
Yes.
a team that runs the ball a lot. The offense is kind of better than people had thought. So if it's a bell cow situation, I want either of them. But now both are injured. Is there one that you're targeting, one you're staying away from more, or how are you navigating the Seahawks situation now that they're both hurt?
And to your point, yes, I saw the news about Zach Charbonnet first, and to which I tweeted, "All right, we're back on the Ken Walker train. Now we can come back." And then someone in my mention said, "Did you see that Ken Walker is also hurt?" And I said, let me check my notes. Okay. Next up, DJ Dallas and
DJ
Kenny
Dallas.
McIntosh, the UDFA from Georgia. Come on up. But with I think I'm still leaning Ken Walker just because it seems like he has the less serious of the two
Mm-hmm.
injuries. It seems like the groin injury is just kind of something that they're managing right now, and he
Mm-hmm.
looks to maybe be ready to go by the beginning of the season. With Zach Charbonnet, it sounded like the tone of his injury was a little bit more serious, that he is out indefinitely. This is a shoulder injury that they are concerned will kind of nag him throughout the season, and they kind of want to get it figured out before he sees that on-field play. So in the short term, I think I'm still going to be on the Kenneth Walker side. I would like to see given maybe a week or two, just kind of
Yeah.
play things out. But for right now, I'm on the Kenneth Walker side of it.
See, this actually, in my eyes, gives Kenneth Walker a bit of a boost, hoping that his injury isn't that serious. Because there's a sort of thing, if Charbonnet isn't there to start the season, Kenneth Walker has a chance to kind of establish he's the guy, and then it's Zach Charbonnet trying to steal touches. And it was already that a little bit, but when they spend a somewhat early draft pick on a running back that they don't really need, you kind of imagine that they have plans to force him some touches each game. So this, in my eyes, gives Walker a better chance to reestablish himself to start the season as the guy. It's kind of his job to lose, which he could.
He could, and I mean,
Charbonnet is arguably they're both good, but Charbonnet
they
isn't
are, and
bad.
we know how Pete Carroll loves to run a two running back
Mm-hmm.
like offense. He'll never not have two or maybe three. It depends on the year. However, like maybe in the opposite realm of Brees Hall, you draft Kenneth Walker as a sell high kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
You use him for the first 4 or 5 weeks, and he's a guy that does a lot well for you. But then you go out and you get maybe a higher tier tight end, or you package him for another wide receiver or something like that. Because if Zach Charbonnet does in fact come back, he is going to take some of those touches. And whether Zach Charbonnet is getting the first and second down work or the third down work, or if he's on the goal line, we just don't know
That's
yet.
yeah.
And it's hard because with training camp, if they both were there, we would at least see that, right? We would see,
Yeah.
okay, so
How are they being used?
running back A is going to be doing this and running back B, but we're not going to see either of that, and we won't know until they come back. So maybe you draft Ken Walker and with the plan and the intention to sell high on his value by like week 5 or 6, and then you're kind of done with it. And you know what? I think that's not a bad play.
Right now, we did this last podcast. I thought it was fun. The running backs going back to back to back. Jahmyr Gibbs, Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones. Those are the 3 going back to back to back. I would rank them Gibbs, Jones, Walker right now. How would you take those 3?
I'm with you on that. I am a big Jahmyr Gibbs guy this season,
Yes.
mostly because with my running backs, I want as much stake in the receiving game as well as possible. And I think that the Lions did, in fact, draft him to be a healthier, more involved DeAndre Swift. And I think that's what he's going to be. I don't know if you saw the inside look of the Detroit Lions in their NFL draft room being like, man, we just moved back from 6 to 12 and we're still not sure Jahmyr Gibbs was going to be there. And they kind of like psyched themselves into thinking like everybody wanted him, when in reality, probably nobody else is going to pick him before like pick 18, 19.
Yeah.
But so they're really high on this guy, and they're not going to not post that and take the 12th overall pick not to use him.
Well, he's all reports are saying he's lining up as a wide receiver. Whenever David Montgomery's in the game, he's a wide receiver. So that is,
versatility.
In fantasy football, if you play PPR, yeah, that is what you want. So it reminds me of my initial Travis Etienne love affair, hoping that it doesn't go that. Hoping we'll see. We got a few more weeks till profit approved stuff, but Gibbs might be on the list.
He's an early candidate, isn't he?
Yes. Now the next situation we got. This is it's always weird talking about the Browns and Deshaun Watson because of the issues he has had, the character, whatever. It's not a good situation, but I think that because of all the things that have happened with Deshaun Watson, the Browns are very underreported and under talked about on social media. And I think that not just Deshaun Watson, but a lot of the wide receivers might become very good values. Specifically, the guy we're talking about, Elijah Moore. We talked about Denzel Mims recently, how we don't really know what he was because he always had Zach Wilson throwing them the ball. Elijah Moore now has Deshaun Watson. Apparently, they are connecting a lot in training camp. Do you think Elijah Moore is someone that could be a sleeper this season? Are you buying into... I mean, there isn't even much hype. I haven't really heard many people talk about him, but are you buying in on Elijah Moore?
And it's funny because, I mean, we had Amari Cooper last year who had a Jacoby Brissett quarterback and a Deshaun Watson in maybe the 4 or 5 worst games of his career, throwing the ball to Amari Cooper, who still finished as a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. And it still seems like with that information, we're still sleeping on Amari Cooper as well, at his current ADP. So, I mean, if they are finding a connection, I think that it's good for Elijah Moore. Would I currently consider him and buy into this hype that he is going to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy? I don't think so. I think I'm still kind of considering him maybe a low end wide receiver 2 at my ceiling right now, just because, I mean, we have Nick Chubb. Deshaun Watson really likes to run the ball. There's a lot of other targets that they really like on that team. Donovan Peoples-Jones last year also was commanding a lot of targets sneakily in that offense. But I think this offense can support 2 wide receivers with Deshaun Watson. I mean, you kind of go back to the days of DeAndre Hopkins and Will Fuller in those offenses when Will Fuller was kind of emerging. So I think we could see a standout performance from Elijah Moore this season, but I'm not ready to buy in on that.
All right. He's I just saw this, only 23 years old.
It's just that crazy, isn't it? Yep.
The Jets, they do that,
especially for dynasty. Yes, especially for dynasty. If you're looking for the future, I would say Elijah Moore, especially in dynasty startups, definitely a good guy to target.
Amari Cooper, you mentioned undervalued. He finished as the wide receiver 9 last season, currently going 408 on sleeper leagues. And I made one TikTok about him saying, hey, he's kind of a good value. Everyone hated it. So,
And that isn't that crazy? Like, if Deshaun Watson gets better, right?
yeah, which,
We're assuming he's
yeah,
going to get better.
because he was
I
been a
mean,
top 5 quarterback every season he played.
if Amari Cooper finished in the top 10 wide receivers last year with Jacoby Brissett and a terrible Deshaun Watson, we're expecting like I don't know.
It,
Like I at that value, he's a great steal. And like
it's
if he
yes.
continues that value, I'm gonna keep him there. And I mean, I'm gonna take him there if he's still there, because now I get it. He was a little inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
If he was better in home games and he was pretty abysmal in away games, and there may be something to that. However, I'm still not gonna knock the amount of volume that he got last year, and I'm not going to knock his talent. So
Yeah.
at the moment, I'm definitely in on Amari Cooper, especially at that value.
Yeah, I think that the Browns, pretty much the whole squad, Elijah Moore, Amari Cooper, Nick Chubb, Deshaun Watson, pick your guy. I think that they will all outperform their ADPs. I'm not going to come on here and say Elijah Moore is going to be top 10 guy, but he's going at 10.04. I think he outperforms that. So I think the Browns are a screaming value right now. And
Definitely. I mean,
seeing this from training camp, it's a good sign, right?
it is a good, it's trending to it. I'm not buying in on the hype because, like you said, this is one of the more, if we're doing factor cap, I would say I'm not buying into this. I'm going to say it's cap because, I mean, at this point in the year, we're basically one day into teams actually being able to wear pads. So
Yeah.
let's pump the brakes here a little bit. But I mean, if we see more and more, this offense does have some holes now, with Kareem Hunt leaving. So there are a lot of targets and a lot of kind of opportunities to be had.
All right, the next one, speaking of pumping the brakes, someone who seems to be incapable of slowing down, Jalen Hyatt, hit 24 miles per hour, which would be one of the fastest, maybe the fastest play in an NFL game. We all know he's very fast, extremely explosive. When he was in college on Tennessee, he torched everyone. Do you buy into some of this early hype for Hyatt, or do you still buy into the knock that offense was very gimmicky and it's not going to translate to the NFL? This is one that kind of, to me, this is a classic beat reporter hype piece when they're just posting like how fast someone went or a one-handed catch in warmups.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm on the train with you there. As a late round guy, I think he's worth the pick. I mean, he was a Bolitnikoff winner, so that has to have something. Also, he kind of is maybe going to get volume in this Giants offense out of a necessity. I mean, the only guys that are taller than him in this wide receiver room are Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton. I mean, everyone else is below 6 foot. This is a offense built on slot receivers and Darren Waller, and like I think they draft him in the third round to at least get a little bit of that value. I think they see him as kind of maybe the next Sterling Shepard, someone who is a deep ball threat kind of guy. So I think there is value there. But to say right now that Jalen Hyatt, fastest man alive right now on the football field, like this dude is going to make plays day in and day out, I'm not buying into that.
Okay, I think it's a case of he'll do more for the Giants than your fantasy team, personally.
Yes, and with the Giants, I mean, with Giants receivers, and since the breakout campaign of Odell Beckham, I feel like that's kind of been their motto.
One, yeah. Well, the next story that is going crazy now over the past 2 days, Jonathan Taylor. This whole situation has gotten so bizarre. The owner coming out and saying, if I die and Jonathan Taylor's out of the NFL, no one's going to care or remember us. Jonathan Taylor they're threatening to say he injured his back during a non-team activity and they won't pay him or play him this year. Jonathan Taylor says, check your sources. I never got injured. Then a new video comes out. Did you see this one? Jonathan Taylor like walking around at practice and it looks like he kind of has a back injury. He's kind of limping real slowly. Did you see that?
I did, and I'm very confused on the whole thing right now. It is bad both for fantasy and real NFL value right now that this kind of saga is going on. And I am concerned about Jonathan Taylor. That is for fantasy wise. If you have already done your dynasty drafts, and you pick Jonathan Taylor with the first or second pick, I'm
Oh
sorry,
boy.
man. I'm so sorry. I do not know what to tell you. Thoughts and prayers. Maybe go pick up Evan Hall, the UDFA from this season, or from this draft. But yeah, I know he's a guy that you really liked coming into this
Oh
season.
yeah.
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 I
I
mean,
was gonna handcuff him with Zach Moss, of course.
and also Zach
He's now
Moss
broken his
now,
yeah.
and he's out for 6 weeks. So your new handcuff, I guess,
Deion Jackson
is
season.
Deion Jackson or the UDFA and Evan Hall, who I've seen a couple of indie beat reporters kind of going crazy over today. Evan Hall season. They're like, let's go. It's Evan Hall season. Get hype. But I mean, right now, if you're doing a fantasy draft, I don't think you can take Jonathan Taylor in the first or second round and feel good about it.
No, there's no way, and it's so unfortunately because he's so good. He is so good, and I don't know why the Colts don't seem to realize that for Anthony Richardson, I think to progress and have a good rookie season, you have to have other pieces on this team.
And in one of those, you kind of need for a rookie quarterback to kind of rely on his running back. I mean, we've seen it multiple times. These kind of, you either need a really good wide receiver core, which I don't think the Colts really have, or you need a really good offensive line and running back, which they do have. Now, last year the Colts offense very overpaid and very disappointing offensive line did not perform. But you kind of have to think that the regression kind of comes back the other way this season, especially with a mobile quarterback in Anthony Richardson. But I mean, for Anthony Richardson to work, you kind of have to have that bell cow running back and this kind of sense of a dual threat offense.
Mm-hmm.
And without that, I feel bad both for Jonathan Taylor, stock, which like he's not just maybe not going to play. And I also don't like Anthony Richardson stock either. If now this kind of becomes a one-dimensional offense.
No, I mean, if you think about how Jalen Hurts would have done if they had no running game. I'm not Miles Sanders is no Jonathan Taylor, but that set up so much for Jalen Hurts to be able to do. That set up the fantasy success. So it's the sort of thing where we kind of lose a bona fide top 5 running back, and then we also lose this breakout caliber quarterback rookie. So it's just frustrating and kind of why you don't draft until week 8.
And that's what I said. When this first came out, I said, and this is why I don't draft until September 1st in any of my leagues, because we are literally only one day into padded practices, and look how much has happened. And it's just we have maybe like 25 more days before we really get into the nitty gritty of gearing up for the NFL season here. It's crazy.
We haven't even had the first torn ACL of preseason. That's still yet to come.
Yes.
And that will change everything as well. I didn't put this one on the docket because this hadn't happened yet, but I want to ask your opinion. This is one that I am actually buying into the hype. Quentin Johnson for the Chargers. He's looked good, but today he did moss some poor defender. But given the draft pick, first round pick, he's kind of that bona fide prototype wide receiver 1 build. It seems like, Justin Herbert isn't super happy with the weapons. They go out and get this guy. I feel like you don't have to overthink it. He's going to be productive in fantasy football. It might not be week 1. It might be like A.J. Brown's rookie season where it started off slow, but then by week 12 on, he was the wide receiver 1 in the offense. I am buying into the Quentin Johnson hype. What do you think about this?
And I don't think that's a terrible thing to do, mostly because we know this Chargers offense deals with injuries every single year. Keenan Allen did not play a game, I think, until one of the double-digit weeks, like week 12 or 13. He did not have a significant fantasy impact. Mike Williams is kind of maybe still hurt concerningly, maybe like what is going on there, right? And I think that's what they did. They brought in Quentin Johnston to kind of be this healthy kind of receiver that
Start
they
fresh.
can feed Justin Herbert. Like this is a guy who I think probably outproduces Josh, kind of takes Josh Palmer's kind of role on this offense, which Josh Palmer is still there. But if you kind of watch the numbers, Josh Palmer had a very impressive season last year. So I don't think it's wrong to say that buying into the Quentin Johnston hype is a bad thing. I think I'm on board with you on that one.
And I will say it wasn't just the video, because I had been thinking he's a sleeper all along, but once I saw him in the pads, emotionally you get a little excited and you go, yeah,
There you go.
he's
Yes.
going way too late in drafts.
And I heard he dropped 3 or 4 passes today, which now in the new NFL, drop passes equals just NFL stud in what we saw with Jamar Chase in his offseason. So definitely not a concern with me. It's going to happen. This is their first practice with pads. Everybody's getting back together, kind of figuring things out. So I'm not concerned about that if that's kind of a knock towards Quentin Johnston.
Although, yeah, with the Jamar Chase dropping, that might actually shoot his ADP up.
And now we have effectively changed the fantasy landscape for the worse.
All right, well, let's get into this mock draft. I'm going to try to share my screen. See if I can do this on the first attempt. You see my screen? Oh.
Yep, there we go.
Wow. That was very easy. Thank you, StreamYard. All right, so you're drafting from the third spot. Yes. You chose that. Do you want to give them some rationale why you chose the third spot?
So we were talking about this before. It's like there are just like, you could just like make this easy on you and pick from the first spot, or you could pick from the 10 and get 2 players and give your reasoning. But I think we both picked positions that are pretty interesting, mostly because just regardless of who you're drafting with, there's always going to be someone who takes something kind of wild, and you're not setting yourself up for a certain player. There are definitely options, I feel like, both at the 3rd overall pick and the 7th overall pick. So just kind of some versatility, maybe having to think on the fly here and give our gut reactions to this first ever, I guess what we're calling mock draft Mondays before the season.
Mock draft Monday. Yes, and we'll have to do one each Monday because so many people get injured that this will probably in a week be completely irrelevant.
Right?
So make sure you listen to this now.
Yes.
I'm at the 7th spot. When I hate being like 5 or 6. Just in the middle is my least favorite. Kind of on the bookend, I like. And you're at 3rd. I'll be 7th, and I get to play it by ear. I cannot predict at all who will be there when I draft. So let's get this thing underway. The first CPU takes Christian McCaffrey, and then Jamar Chase. So you are up.
And with those first 2 picks, I think Christian McCaffrey is a interesting first overall pick here. Jamar Chase even more interesting because I do still think the number 1 wide receiver is on the board here in Justin Jefferson. I was huge into Justin Jefferson last year. He paid in dividends for me last year. I'd be crazy not to go with Justin Jefferson here. So without further more explanation, I'm going to go with Jay Jettas.
Congratulations. JJ at the 3rd is a fantastic pick. Eckler goes, Kelsey, and then Kupp. So I am on the board. In terms of wide receivers, I've got Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown. I'm not super high on those guys except for Tyreek Hill in the 1st. I think I might take the 3rd running back off the board. Usually right here, I would pick Jonathan Taylor. Right now, I'm not going to pick Jonathan Taylor. I'm going to play it a little risky with a rookie who has been showing up in camp as a receiver too, Bijan Robinson.
And once again, like, that is a volume pick through and through. Like, you are going to get the most value out of that guy based on volume alone.
And now we've got A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, and Saquon go. And then Jonathan Taylor is drafted at the 2-1, Stephon Diggs and Patrick Mahomes, the first quarterback off the board. So now I'm back, and I am going to take someone I talked about earlier in this podcast being a bit of a value, Nick Chubb. I'm going to double up on running back. Look, the running back landscape, after the 2nd round, there's some guys I like, but it's starting to get a little thin. It starts to get a little thin. And I like some guys in the 3rd, 4th round, but I think I'm going to secure it with Nick Chubb.
And then, I mean, you do definitely probably have the best running back tandem, I think, for fantasy wise. I think there's like the team. There are two other teams that went running back with
Mm-hmm.
this CPU generated Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, or Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. I think volume wise,
Yeah.
those were two of the best volume picks here. And as I talk about that, I'm going to go in a different direction here and take another wide receiver. And with the possible kind of players on the board here, the top four wide receivers right now are Amon-Ra St. Brown, um, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, and T. Higgins. And for me, I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown here. I
Mm-hmm.
loved what he did last year. Jared Goff is just one of those guys that I think is going to throw it a million times a game. And this is, in fact, a very dynamic offense here that the Detroit Lions have built. And I want the guy who's going to star in that offense. So I'm going to take Amon-Ra St. Brown.
But did you hear Jameson Williams is dropping a lot of balls? So are you worried about that now? That he's going to come back and be Jamar
Oh,
Chase?
maybe for the first the first 6 games while Jameson Williams isn't there, he balls out and I sell him high. I'm not really worried about that. I think even last year we saw just how much they want to give it to Amon Ra,
Yeah.
and I think he might even be in for a bigger season
The Sun
this
God.
year. Yes, the Sun God, always on. Um, Always with the Sun God since day one. Back to my pick here, we had Josh Jacobs and Garrett Wilson go, as long with the two other quarterbacks here in Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thinking about taking one of those guys if he made it to the turn. Obviously, they didn't, so that is kind of a advantage that I am going to miss out on. However, a guy that I really like this season in Tony Pollard is still available
Oh,
here. Now, I see what you're thinking here, that maybe going 3 wide receivers in Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jalen Waddle is so
it
intriguing
would
to me.
be.
However, you got to kind of, at some point, you got to notice when the value in running back falls off. And for rounds 4 through 6, I feel like the value kind of falls off there
Mm-hmm.
a little bit. So at least for me, so I'm going to take Tony Pollard, a guy who I had last year, and without Zeke now, I feel like is going to be a dual threat running back, both in the running game and also very heavily involved in the passing game. His backup also got suspended today. His name is escaping me. He got suspended for 2 to 3 games already, but I'm going to take Tony Pollard here.
I like that pick. That's Jefferson, Brown, and Pollard is a good start, and I am very thankful that Waddle, Hall, and Andrews went, because there was a wide receiver that I was hoping would fall to me in the third, but I wasn't sure. And I know you like him too, so I was crossing my fingers you wouldn't do something crazy and take him. Chris Olave at 3-7 to pair with Bijan Robinson, Nick Chubb. I love Olave at that pick.
That's a great pick. I'm here for Chris Olave, wide receiver 1 season. I'm here to support you. And now you don't even have to think about it. Now you don't even have to think about it.
I would have done it. I would have had to. So
really, yeah.
Higgins, Stevenson, and Harris went, and then Lamar Jackson, Devontae Smith, and everyone. Travis Etienne was taken from me by CPU 8. So now I've got an interesting situation. The quarterbacks are gone. Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and Jackson are all off the board. Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert are all still there. That's enough that I'm comfortable waiting one more round and seeing what you and the other CPUs do. I think I am going to go for another running back, secure my running back position officially, and take Jahmyr Gibbs.
Interesting.
I think
like
that
it. I mean,
this is PPR. He'll be my flex.
And that's, I mean, having Jahmyr Gibbs in your flex is a good problem to have, right? I think for sure, unless there are any other options that you want to consider.
There are some good wide receivers. DK Metcalf, Debo, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley. But there are enough good receivers left that I think I can wait till round 5. I think that I think I'll be fine with potentially Jerry Jeudy or Terry McLaurin or even DeAndre Hopkins being my wide receiver 2. And looking at how many wide receivers have been drafted, I'm confident that at least some of these teams are going to have to go a little running back heavy here soon. And I think this is my last chance kind of at startable running back at least week 1. So I'm going to
Yeah,
do it.
I have no problem with that pick there. And these teams here, Team 6 taking Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adam, Mark Andrews, and Debo Samuel. No running backs off the board there,
That is
um,
interesting.
which leaves me a very interesting kind of conundrum here. And I'm thinking about two guys right now. One being Aaron Jones to be my running back 2,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of taking the chance on Calvin Ridley to create a Jefferson, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Calvin Ridley trio here at the third pick in this 10-teamer. Um, and I think I have to do it. I think
Yeah.
because I think someone else is one of these CPUs is probably going to snipe him there.
Well, you've
Um,
got now 3 wide receiver 1s on their teams.
Yes, with 3 quarterbacks who love to throw
Yeah.
the ball in Kirk Cousins, who throws to Jefferson. Uh, Sometimes when he's not even open. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jared Goff, who just slings it, and Calvin Ridley, who has looked very impressive so far in training camp and kind of looking to be to come back there. So with this pick, I'm very tempted to take a quarterback here and kind of finish that off. However, I feel comfortable with kind of a couple of the pieces that I still have down the board. And I kind of
Mm-hmm.
want to fill out my team here. So I'm going to reach a little bit, but I do like that he's still on the board here in Miles Sanders to be
Okay.
my running back 2.
Volume is
I think
king too.
yes, and I think that's kind of why I take him out of the board with J.K. Dobbins still on the board there, who went 2 picks afterwards.
I was hoping he'd
Um,
fall.
Kind of worried there with Lamar Jackson. You always have Gus Edwards there. So his touches are never guaranteed. So I'm going to take the guy with the most volume there.
So at this point, Keenan Allen, Aaron Jones, Hopkins, Joe Mixon, Hawkinson, Dobbins, and Amari Cooper have all been drafted in between, leaving me with wide receiver options of McLaurin, Drake London, DJ Moore, Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson. I like some of those guys, but I feel like they're a little bit of a reach right now. But Terry McLaurin at 5'7" is my wide receiver 2. I think that is a good pick. I think that's pretty much as good as I could do waiting till the end of the 5th round to take my wide receiver 2. So I know Cam Akers is on the board. I love him, but I won't even be able to start him. I'm going to go Terry McLaurin and hope that one of the other wide receivers make it back. So Damian Pierce, Joe Burrow, Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, Kittle, and Goddard are drafted. And now it gets ugly.
Now becomes decision time here.
Yeah.
For sure.
I can't do Drake London. I can't.
This is
Goodness.
kind of what we talked about with like Drake London or a Chris Godwin or something like that. Like you got to kind of think about it.
At this point, I'm gonna steer away from positions and just go with who do I think is gonna score me the most points each week available, and that would be Justin Herbert here. And at quarterback, Justin Herbert and or Justin Fields and Justin Herbert are still available. I'm gonna take Fields because after them you get Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, some guys that are good quarterbacks, but there are a few more question marks. I think Fields with the running ability, some new passing options. I think that Justin Fields is a good pick here in the middle of the 6th round.
And yeah, I really like that pick. I was a little concerned there. I thought you were going to take Justin Herbert, who I wanted to pick there. Obviously, did
CPU
not
took
make
him
it.
too. Draft sniped you.
Draft sniped me, but that's okay here. So now I have to kind of pivot and figure out what could I do here with my team. And there's still only having 2 running backs on my team. So I'm still feeling like I need a third. And the guy that I talked about that is just being slept on for whatever reason, who is the bell cow and is going to get the volume in this offense, I'm going to take James Conner here. Because at least I know that he is going to get he's going to demand a lot of volume here. And with that, I think I can't wait on a quarterback any longer. And I'm going to pair my flex here with Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to take a Trevor
It's a
Lawrence,
good
Calvin Ridley
stack.
stack there.
That is good. So your team right now, it's Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Calvin Ridley at wide receiver, Tony Pollard, Miles Sanders, James Conner at running back, and Trevor Lawrence. I like that.
I'd like it. I would like a tight end here. But like just where I was, the value felt like I had better positions of need over a tight end.
Now, this is someone we talked about in the 5th round on the latest podcast. That 5th round wide receiver, one of them's going to do it, but there's always a gamble. And Chris Godwin was in that conversation. We're now in middle 7th round. Chris Godwin is still on the board. I am fine with the question marks in the 7th round for Chris Godwin. I think that he'll be serviceable as my wide receiver 3, and I'm going to pull the trigger on Chris Godwin.
And I agree with you there. In the 7th round, I think Chris Godwin is totally a fine pick there, because you just have that such a big question mark in Baker Mayfield that I just don't think I could have done that in the 5th round there when you have guys like Terry McLaurin and Christian Watson on the board.
Well, now we've got Lockett, Madison, Evans, Waller, Pittman, and Brown all going, and I'm left with Javonte Williams and Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco at running back, and Deontay Johnson and Treylon Burks at wide receiver. Oh man, this is a little gross in the 8th round. I think that I talked about how I kind of like Deontay Johnson, and you talked about how you like Treylon Burks. I'm going to draft snipe you, and I'm going to take Treylon Burks.
Wow. Okay.
In the eighth round, I'm fine with it. I'm fine
in the
with it.
8th round. So maybe something I said, kind of stuck out there. So all right, I'll take it. If you did not take Treylon Burks, let the record show I was going to take Treylon Burks there. so that good drafting 101 here. A guy who I'm looking at the board right now, and so the running backs on the board are Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, Alvin Kamara, and David Montgomery right now on the board, as well as James Cook a little bit lower. Not a lot of value I like there right now, because I know that at least two of these, I feel really good about two of these 3 running backs putting up at least high RB2 to high end or low end RB1 value every single week, paired with a Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Calvin Ridley kind of wide receiver core. I feel good about that right now, so I'm not going to take any of those guys on kind of the necessity that I might need. However, a guy that I find super intriguing this year is Jackson Smith and Jigba. Definitely, I think the rookie that probably has the most potential to kind of be the best rookie this year, fantasy wise, outside of Bijan Robinson. The last time he played football, he went for 350 plus yards and 3 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl, which, he also, in his last full season healthy, out received both Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave when they all 3 were on a team. So I really, really like the potential there in Jackson Smith and Jigba, definitely kind of taking on a Tyler Lockett light role in that offense, and that's why I'm going to take him there. Moving on, once again, not loving a lot of the options on the board here. Definitely, there are some interesting options here, and I'm between 2 guys right now. And since you sniped one of my guys, I think I'm going to snipe you back here. And I'm going to take Jahan Dotson here. Because I had a feeling that's who you were targeting right there. And we talked about on the last show, Jahan Dotson, we both think definitely a intriguing kind of guy this season that could maybe stand to kind of do as good, if not better, than Terry McLaurin.
No, and I probably would have taken him, but maybe it's for the best, because then I would have had pretty much too much Commanders for
Yes.
too,
Yes.
too much of my team banking on Sam Howell. Well, now it's interesting. I'm drafting backups, and right now I think as a backup in a PPR league, I think James Cook is about as good as it gets in the 9th round. Kadarius Toney is already injured. AJ Dillon is I I don't like AJ Dillon.
I mean,
He
it's hard in that offense, right?
Yeah,
It's you have a better running back, or at least a more productive running back in
and the
Aaron
pass
Jones.
catching back.
Yes.
So
They basically do the same thing.
I'm gonna go with James Cook and hope that Quentin Johnson makes it back around to me. So I take him. AJ Dillon goes next. Antonio Gibson, Kadarius Toney, Brandon Cooks, Jameson Williams, Khalil Herbert. It worked. I'm gonna take Quentin Johnson as a backup wide receiver.
There you go. And they're man, they are really low on my guy here for the tight end position. So I feel like I can kind of hold off on him. And with what I'm seeing on the board right now, there are a couple guys that I like, but at this point, it really just does kind of become a crapshoot. I feel
Yeah.
like so you kind of I'm going to fill a position of need here and take the guy that I want to be my starting tight end in Dalton Schultz. Um, I feel like we're sleeping on Dalton Schultz a lot and taking crazy pills. Like he wasn't like one of the top 5 most productive tight ends last season. And I mean, what's a rookie quarterback's favorite thing besides maybe a really bell cow heavy running back? It is a security blanket tight end. And I feel like even for Dak, that's what Dalton Schultz was.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna take him there, and then with this next pick, I'm going to take one of my other favorite running backs here in Samaj P.
Yep.
Ryan.
I was shocked he
Definitely,
fell.
definitely a guy that I think, despite Javonte Williams coming back, will have a role in that offense. And I think he could be sneaky good.
At this point, 11th round, there aren't many players who have secure roles. Quentin Johnson, I feel like, has a chance to become, at least by the end of the season, the wide receiver 1 for Baltimore. I think it could happen given the injury history of everyone else on that team. And in the 11th round, finding someone who might be the wide receiver 1, I think is about all you can do. So I'm going to go with Zay Flowers, the upside pick. And then, yeah, at this point, it's just I'm going for upside.
Yeah, and I think that's the best. That's the best thing you can target. There, it's like you're not looking at ADP anymore. You could pick a guy that's super down the board, but you want to make sure that you get your guy. And that's kind of the important part here. So, and now you kind of just get into a lot of it is very much kind of we're getting very close to the desert of just who knows, you know?
Yeah. I'm going to take a tight end that you have talked me into a bit. And I'm going to go with Big Chig.
No, oh no, that was my next pick. Oh my god, I was gonna come back around.
I
And take
waited
him.
very long at the tight end position, and I think that they're going to rely on him, and I think he'll be serviceable as a tight end. And I think that of the tight ends in this area, he has the most upside.
It for sure has the most upside. If he does not get utilized in this offense this year, I may just have to have a meeting with Tim Kelly, Mike Vrabel, and Ren Carthen and sit down and say, what are we doing? Because Chigakonkwo is a special player, and I'm excited to see him this year.
So I'm going to take him.
So
I'm going to take him from
good
you.
pick. Good pick. Dang, man. Definitely someone I wanted. So now just definitely still a little light at the running back position here, having Tony Pollard, Miles Sanders, James Conner, and Samaj P. Ryan. Obviously, I really was going to make a case for Devon Achane there. Of course, he went at the end of the last round, would have been my guy here to target. But there still is value here. And I'm going to take Elijah Mitchell, mostly because when paired with Christian McCaffrey last year, he still was getting more yards and carries than Christian McCaffrey was. So I think in a pinch, he probably could be serviceable. Of course, injuries have been the name of the game for Elijah Mitchell for a long time now. And yeah, with this next pick, I'm just gonna kind of throw darts at a board and see what sticks. And I'm gonna take Odell Beckham, who's
Odell.
on the board here. He could be good, he could be bad. I don't know, but it is the second to last round, basically. So not worried about it.
And I'm going to do the same and throw a dart at a board. And I am going to go with. I lost him.
It's tough, man. It's tough.
I'm going to go with Devin Singletary. I think that.
Interesting.
I'm thinking that he's going to be more involved than people expect, and he's going to be relied on a little bit with the young quarterback. And I think he's a better running back than people give him credit for. And I'm throwing a dart at the board, finding someone that I can, if everyone else get injured 1 week and then their buys, plug him in and get 8 points. That's what I want.
And at the end of the season last year, he was kind of serviceable. I mean, he was getting goal line touches. He was getting a little bit of receiving work. So I don't knock you for that pick at all. I think out of the running backs that was there, that was probably the best.
And I'm looking at I think I'm going to go 49ers defense now before kicker.
Definitely with the first three off the board and Justin Tucker, Evan McPherson,
Yeah.
Daniel Carlson, who's always been just very valuable kicker wise. I think that's
fair
play there.
A good defense.
But then again,
and find my kicker later. Oh, they're all going.
Interesting now. And so I'm going to continue here and take a kicker. And it really is just kind of a crapshoot here. Kind of going off which offense do I think is going to be the most explosive. And out of the picks here, taking Sanders out of Miami there. I'm going to take them. And then, of course, you get to defense. And I always take my defense last because I'm one of those guys who waiver wires defenses like crazy. Definitely the way I do it is that there may be like 2 or 3 defenses a year that like you can keep them the whole year and they're going to get you above like 7 points. However, on week to week basis, I feel like you can even find some bottom of the barrel like defenses that are playing like whatever the bad team of the year was. In this case, the Arizona Cardinals, maybe this year. Whatever team's playing the Arizona Cardinals, you can probably plug and play them. And there's a chance that Colt McCoy or whoever's quarterbacking them is going to throw 3 interceptions and they're going to return 1 for a touchdown. And then you kind of are helping yourself out there that way. So, just take I'm going to
Titans
say screw
defense.
it. I cover the Titans. I feel good about their defense this year. So I'm going to take them. Definitely playing that second place schedule, not having to deal with the Chiefs or the Bills or the Bengals or anything like that.
If they make it to the playoffs, they have a good schedule too. So.
Yes.
I'm going to go Jake Elliott for my kicker for Philly. It's a good offense. If they regress a little bit, maybe they'll kick a little bit more. He was pretty accurate last year, 20 out of 23 field goals. And there aren't really any other quarterbacks left or kickers left. So Jake Elliott to finish up my team. And then let's read through these and see whose team turned out better. So read off yours and then I'll read off mine and we'll debate.
So on mine here, started off with the first and second picks going back-to-back wide receivers, taking Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown. For my third pick, took my first running back in Tony Pollard. Came back in the fourth and had a little bit of a discussion there, but took Calvin Ridley ultimately. I like the upside there. Came back in the fifth and sixth with 2 running backs in Miles Sanders and James Conner, both high-volume guys. Kind of waited on a quarterback here, but went with a guy that I think will do well, and especially in a stack with Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence. Came back and took 2 promising young receivers in JSN and Jahan Dotson. Finally got a tight end who I think is criminally underrated in Dalton Schultz. Came back with Shamon J.P. Ryan, Elijah Mitchell, and Odell Beckham, and then finished it up with Jason Sanders, I think is his name. I know I said Sanders, but I think it's Jason
Yeah,
Sanders and the
Jason.
Tennessee Titans defense.
I like that. We had pretty much opposite drafts looking at the board. You went 2 wide receivers. I went 2 running
flip-flopping,
backs. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
So I started off Bijan. I don't know why I keep saying Brian. Bijan Robinson at 1-7, and then Nick Chubb doubled up on the running backs. Then I went for my first wide receiver in Chris Olave. And then I went for another running back because I like running backs who catch the ball, and I got Jahmyr Gibbs in the 4th round. Then 5th round, I took Terry McLaurin as my wide receiver too. I don't think he'll be fantastic, but I think he'll be serviceable as a wide receiver too. Justin Fields as my quarterback in the 6th. He's got the high upside rushing ability. Chris Godwin and Treylon Burks as my bench wide receivers. I think that they both could, if things go right with the quarterbacks, could way outperform the ADP. Right now, I'm not super high on them, but there's a chance if the quarterback situation goes right, they'll be serviceable. And then James Cook and Quentin Johnson is pure upside, shots in the dark. Zay Flowers is another pure upside shot in the dark, hoping that he can maybe be the wide receiver 1 by the end. Chig Okonkwo, is that how it's pronounced? Okonkwo at the tight end, in the 12th round. And then Devin Singletary, 49ers, and Jake Elliott. So I went a little running back heavy. You went pretty wide receiver heavy. And I'll put this up on Instagram and let people vote on which team they think is better. But I think I like both these teams. I wish this was a real draft.
I know, right? I like this. I'm looking here. I'm like, damn, I really wish I would have this team. But I like the thinking process from both. I think these are very interesting ways to go about it. And of course, there's a lot of other strategies out there. But for the basic strategies of either, hey, I want to go running back super heavy and secure those, or hey, I'm okay waiting on the running backs this season. I want to go wide receiver heavy. These are 2 options here with kind of laid out the kind of other options and why we would take the players we did over some others.
It's interesting. I also think that where we were plays a part. So drafting kind of the back half of the draft, those elite wide receivers were gone, and it sort of forced my draft to be running back heavy. Whereas yours, I think when you got Justin Jefferson, the opportunity to pair that with another top 12 wide receiver, that you can't
definitely
pass that up.
Yeah, and there are different kind of ways to do that. Like if you do like Josh Jacobs, or maybe if a Derrick Henry falls or something like that in your drafts here, and you say, hey, I have Justin Jefferson, who kind of is a wide receiver 1.5 some weeks, right? Like there are different ways to do it. Like one, you could pair them with a good wide receiver that's probably most likely going to finish in the top 12 in fantasy, or I have security already at wide receiver. Now let me build my running backs and take some of those better valued, kind of deeper wide receivers later.
Yeah, I think both these teams are great. We'll have to figure out some way to see which team finishes best at the end of the season.
There you go.
But that's gonna do it for this podcast. Everyone, thank you for listening. Do you have any closing remarks? My closing remark is draft Jahmyr Gibbs. What?
Mine is keep the faith on Treylon Burks because clearly if we've already done one episode and you're drafting Treylon Burks, I'm doing something right here.
I've been brainwashed by the Titans fans. I'm gonna be in a Burks jersey next week. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Maybe we'll see.
Well, thank you all for listening. We will see you next time.